A Fox News alert and good morning to you. I'm John Scott, live in America's newsroom today.
And I'm Shannon Breen. The danger not over yet, with Irma on the move heading over Florida toward Georgia. It's now a tropical storm and is expected to weaken further.
It roared into southern Florida as a monster Category 4 hurricane, carrying a wide path of destruction, the whole state really, unleashing destructive winds, record-setting flooding, and power outages across Florida. Fox News reporters fanning out all across the hurricane zone.
The storm surge is coming, and it's coming very quickly along the water, which is just 3.1 miles east of us.
Start to feel like that hurricane force intensity. And that's when you start getting the rain flying sideways.
It's darker, and this has got to be the walleye. I think we're seeing over 100 right now.
We're not done with the storm surge yet, and this is what you're seeing out here. This is the storm surge coming in. We're on the back end of this.
My photographer, Steve, and I recognize that we think there must be an issue because we can definitely smell sewage at this point, so we're probably going to leave this area really soon.
Yowza. All right, my co-anchor on America's Newsroom, Bill Hemmer, is live in Orlando to cover the storm for us. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Shannon, good morning again. We're going to take our viewers through this process right now in the big picture. You have to worry about standing water and flooding. We'll talk about that in Jacksonville. You have to worry about electricity, more than 6 million without power throughout the state. That's going to be an issue throughout the day today and perhaps for some for several days to come. I want to start in northeastern Florida, in Jacksonville along the St. Johns River, where they're experiencing historic flooding as we speak. It is 11 a.m. local time. It will not be high tide for at least 3 more hours, and already they've exceeded a record that was set in 1964, going back 52 years. Jacksonville is watching the river rise. Evacuation orders have gone out for people living in those low-lying areas, and the mayor is chiefly concerned right now with making sure that everybody is okay and taken care of there. That's about 120 miles north of our location in Orlando, about 300 miles south of here in Key Largo, Florida. That's the beginning of the Florida Keys as they go out along US 1 and string together that bead of islands in South Florida. We do not have a fair reading just met of a damage assessment. We do know the road's been blown out. We don't know to what extent. We know power is an issue. Certainly cell phone service has been knocked out there. As to injuries, there were no reports yet of injuries in many parts of the Keys, but that could change again as this picture becomes more clear. Again, early hours right now with a damage assessment there in far southern Florida. Move up the coast there where the second impact occurred yesterday afternoon. Marco Island took a direct hit at a Category 3 at that point. And just to the northwest of Marco Island is the town of Naples, which is right on the backside of that storm yesterday. What we're feeling now are tropical storm winds on behalf of Irma, but we expect over the next hour or two that that's going to blow its way out of here, and by the end of the afternoon we should be looking at blue skies. But back in Naples, the mayor is on the phone now, Bill Barnett, sir, and good morning to you, sir. Give us a sense right now, based on your best assessment, how did your town fare with Irma now?
I think we fared okay. Not great, but not as catastrophic as it could have been had that storm surge come in.
All right, the construction codes have changed over the years, starting with Andrew 25 years ago, and each storm after that changes the laws and it changes the way, frankly, you do things. What can you say about the new construction in Naples and how it fared against Irma, be it windows or siding, or what have you found so far?
Well, so far, no major structural damage, no reports of that, and as you very aptly said, the years go by, and every year the Florida building codes get tougher, and so when you build now, you're building to a new set of tough codes, and it's a good thing.
Yeah. Marco Island is to the southeast. What have you heard from there, sir?
They're closed. They've literally closed Marco Island today. I heard they did not fare well. The good news for them is they really had a really good evacuation. People heated like they did here in Naples, and really got out. So I think there were about 1,000 people that were left on Marco yesterday.
Okay, now of those 1,000 people, is there a bridge that's intact? What's the accessibility, Mayor?
Yeah, I didn't hear anything negative about the bridge itself, but I know that the damages up there were severe, and they decided today they're just closing the island.
When you describe severe, I'm just trying to give our viewers a better sense of that. Do you have a better description, or do you have more information? Were homes taken out, or did they stand the storm?
We did not get a lot of information, but I can pretty well, and I know Marco pretty well. I would say that they have streets that are definitely not accessible. I don't know about home damage, but the horticultural damage that we had in Naples and what I visibly can see, I'm just multiplying it in Marco, that it's probably pretty much of a shambles. I didn't hear anything about any homes or windows or anything being taken down, but I didn't get a lot of information out of them.
Okay. I certainly appreciate that. I know Naples is your chief responsibility here, sir. And Mayor, when you think about, and listen, we're 30 hours later right now, if that, from a direct impact there in Naples, do you think you got lucky?
Yes, sir. And no two ways about it. We did.
Wow. And that has to be the direction of the storm. As it took direct aim on Marco, you just to the west of that, and with the way the storm is rotating, pushing the ocean waters away from Naples, I just wonder, in hindsight, sir, was that a stroke of luck?
Well, Bill, the eye wall came right over us when it left Marco, and then what happened was when we were really worried about that storm surge, the back end of that storm broke up, and that's probably why we didn't. But we had our Naples Bay, we had bays yesterday that were dry. I mean, it sucked all the water out, and then, as you well know, then the wind switches and comes in from the west, and it brings it all back. So, yes, we were really lucky that the back end of that storm broke up.
Mayor, it's great to hear your voice. Good luck to you there, and we're going to assess the damage in Marco Island and throughout Naples throughout the day. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your time today. You know, John, no two storms are the same, right? And for some people, this was a water event, and for others, it was a wind event. For some people, it was both water and wind. So we're going to work our way throughout the day here and figure out the assessment in Naples, Marco Island, and further south in the Keys. That is a chief concern right now in South Florida, and certainly in Jacksonville with the waters rising. High tide, 2 o'clock this afternoon. Now, John, back to you.
We can tell from the conditions where you are that this storm is still very powerful. Bill Hemmer. Bill, thanks. We are getting breaking news out of Jacksonville right now. Officials are telling residents to shelter in place. Do not come out of your homes yet. It is not safe. The Keys also taking a major hit from then Hurricane Irma when the storm made landfall a bit east of Key West with Category 4 winds on Sunday. The extent of the damage coming to light now as Irma moves on to the north. Adam Housley is live for us in Key Largo right now. Adam?
Yeah, John, the damage is extensive throughout the Keys. We had a chance to drive from southern Key Largo all the way down to about mile marker 50 or so. It goes down to 0, of course, where Key West is. And the damage on the ocean side pretty much is the same all the way down. It's extensive. On the bay side, it's more wind damage. You see a lot of trees down, signs down, that type of thing. Maybe a month from now, you wouldn't even know there's a hurricane on that side of the islands. But on the east side of the islands, John, it's stuff like this. We were actually here live on Friday. You might remember I actually tweeted out a photo for Fox News that showed a houseboat standing right here that said, "Hold on, Irma, hold my beer, I'll be right back." That boat is now basically just a piece of wood on the ground, on the water. Everything is underwater. This place just got absolutely hammered, as you can tell. Boats stuck in upside down in some ways into each other. These houseboats are just thrashed. There's really nothing left here whatsoever. If you go over a little bit to the right here, in fact, Lloyd, keep going. The water surge in this area, John, was 6 feet. Look at this one right here. This house was out in the water. It was a newer build houseboat, but still thrown up onto the shore. And you see these type of views on the ocean side all the way down. The latest information we've been told is this: every single bridge in the Keys is currently shut down. They wanted to go through every single one and ensure that they're structurally safe. Secondly, the hospital here in the Keys shut down. They also want to check the structural stability of that as well. No ambulance service still at this hour. The helicopters just flew over us. The assessment has begun from the air. They're going to be moving south. Also, the Sheriff's Department still unable to respond at this hour to any security risks or any problems because they're trying to go around and assess the road situation. Many of the roads here in the Keys are impassable. The main highway is open, we're told, for a bit, but once you get down to Marathon, where there's reports of parts of the road and chunks of the road being out. The problem with getting the exact information from down there is the communications are out here. There's no power. There hasn't been power for nearly 48 hours now for much of the Keys. There's no cell service as you head south, and a lot of the communication towers are down as well. So, John, it'll be a long time here before a lot of this recovery takes place, and they're still assessing how many injuries they have, how many deaths they have, and I got to tell you, the destruction toll here is going to be in the billions, John.
Yeah, especially we got late word that roughly 25% of the population of Key West apparently decided to weather it out on the island itself. So again, it takes 24, sometimes 48 hours for the news to emerge from the epicenter of the storm, where the eye wall first made contact with the United States, and there could be bad news ahead. It sure looks bad behind you there. Adam Housley, thanks very much, Adam.
Yeah.
Well, the threat from Irma is far from over as the tropical storm travels north. Florida leaders are going to join us live, talk about how their hometowns are now coping, and the president marking his first September 11th in office, while also keeping an eye on the situation with Irma. We'll tell you about his response and what he's mobilizing after this devastating storm.
We're going to Florida very soon. It's going to cost a lot of money. Right now, we're worried about lives, not cost.
The president vows to visit hurricane-ravaged Florida very soon. President Trump has approved a disaster declaration for the state that ushers in federal funds for counties struggling with flooding, power outages, and wind damage.
My administration is monitoring the situation around the clock, and we're in constant communications with all of the governors, with the state and local officials. We're doing everything possible to help save lives and support those in need. Again, we've never seen anything like this. Together, we will restore, recover, and rebuild, and we'll do it quickly.
Joining us now, Brett Baer, the anchor of Special Report. We were talking earlier with Karl Rove, Brett, about how the Bush 43 administration came to be defined by the attacks of 9/11/01. Every president faces crises that he is not expecting, and it may be that these twin hurricanes come to define the Trump administration.
It's possible, John. Good morning. It's interesting to hear Democrats talk about the response and the interaction between the federal government and the state government, local governments. Democrat Bill Nelson from Florida said it has been seamless. You heard the Democratic governor of Louisiana say something similar for Harvey. The president has gotten very good grades for this, especially his FEMA administrator, Brock Long, his Homeland Security advisor, Tom Bossert, and his entire team in interacting quickly and forward positioning response to both Texas and Florida. He is benefited, we should point out, by very accomplished governors in Governor Greg Abbott in Texas and Governor Rick Scott in Florida, who had a good operation on the ground, something that many argue did not happen in Louisiana at Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, both of those states got the word out very quickly that these storms were not to be trifled with, and that obviously, I think we're going to find out, has saved a lot of lives, and as you point out, the president is benefiting from that.
Yeah, clearly, and the messages, the statements he's made have helped the local and state officials in their efforts, and also the quick disaster funding efforts to sign it Sunday to enable these counties to get the federal funds quickly. I think there's more to be said probably as we go on here and what the follow-up is on the federal government side, but so far he's getting good marks across the board. He
wants to make a trip to Florida, says he will be visiting very soon. That doesn't sound like days. I mean, the entire state really has been ravaged by this storm, still is being ravaged by the storm, and the amount of work that goes into a presidential visit is going to be difficult to pull off for the local authorities in Florida as of, the way things stand right now.
Yeah, and I think he'll clear that with Governor Scott and the local authorities before doing it. But remember, he's a native New Yorker, but really a Floridian as well, with the winter White House being Mar-a-Lago and his time down in Palm Beach there. So I think there is a closeness to Florida, and he's anxious to get down there from all we've heard.
He had an interesting comment regarding the Coast Guard. I want to play that for you and our viewers right now.
A group that really deserves tremendous credit is the United States Coast Guard. What they've done, I mean, they're going right into that, and you never know. You know, when you go in there, you don't know if you're going to come out. They are really, if you talk about branding, no brand has improved more than the United States Coast Guard.
Bit of a backhanded compliment, I guess, there from the president regarding the Coast Guard. How's that playing in Washington?
Oh, listen, I think he's praising the Coast Guard and their efforts in both of these storms. He met with the Coast Guard directly, so I'm sure that's fresh in his mind. And, the Coast Guard, as far as branches of the U.S. military, sometimes doesn't get as much publicity as other branches do. And now, in these situations, I think he's pointing out that it is.
They have done terrific work in this storm and many others. Bret Baier, Bret, thank you.
Okay, John.
Don't miss a special report exclusive. Bret sits down with CIA Director Mike Pompeo today at 6 p.m. Eastern on the anniversary of 9/11, right here on Fox News Channel.
Well, Tropical Storm Irma continues to move north into Georgia now this morning, leaving behind destruction all across Florida. Governor Rick Scott saying the storm may be moving on, but the danger is still very real.
We're working hard to get our state back to normal, but most importantly, we got to save every life, and we got to make sure people understand it's still dangerous.
Hurricane Irma churned through the Tampa Bay area today as a Category 1 hurricane before being downgraded to a tropical storm. It wasn't as powerful as the city may have been expecting, but officials are still warning about strong winds and storm surges. The international airport there may be able to reopen tomorrow or Wednesday. Congressman Dennis Ross joins us now from his home in Lakeland, about 45 minutes east of Tampa, represents that area. Congressman, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Something a lot of folks may not realize about this region of Florida, I mean, there's a lot of agriculture there. There are crops. There's livestock. How does a storm like this impact concerns about those operations?
They impacted significantly. Not only do we have the agricultural community here, we also have a lot of oaks, a lot of pine trees, and we've had a very rainy season so far, so the root system of these trees has become very moist and unstable. And I've driven around this morning. A lot of live oaks have turned over. A lot of pine trees have snapped in half. It will impact the agricultural industry to some degree. The citrus industry, God help them, they've gone through citrus greening. They've gone through canker, and now this is going to have a significant economic impact on our agricultural industry here in Florida.
Yeah, and there's a ripple effect as those things become more important for households across America. But you mentioned the trees down there. Tell us a little bit more about how things are where you are right now.
Well, we fortunately have not had any recorded fatalities that we know of in Polk County, where I am. We did have a lot of storm damage because of the winds. When the storm went over, the eye went over us at about 12:30 this morning. We were having 80 and 90 mile an hour winds. I have driven around several. In fact, when I get off this phone call, I'm taking a generator to a constituent who had a oak tree go through the roof of their house, and that's quite common right now. Is what I'm seeing, a lot of down trees.
Yeah, and this obviously comes just days after all of the destruction over in Texas and Louisiana from Harvey. How do you prepare for a storm like this, knowing, FEMA, Red Cross, all these other groups that are involved with storm rescue and rehab, they are stretched along a lot of areas right now.
We learned a lot from Hurricane Harvey. My constituency, the people here in the state of Florida, took this storm very, very seriously. They were prepared. They were prepared more so than I've ever seen. In 2004, when we had 3 storms go through my district, in 2005, when we had Wilma, when we saw Katrina, we never thought it would happen to us, but it did. And even though it's been 13 years, they prepared. And I think we are fortunately having the benefits of that good preparation. We need a lot of volunteers, got a lot of volunteers, but people listened to the warnings. They evacuated. They didn't go out. They paid attention to the curfews, and they did what they could to mitigate the potential of damage. And that is a benefit that, fortunately, we're enjoying right now.
Yeah, let me ask you about basic supplies and gasoline. I have a lot of family all across Florida and heard many stories about the pumps simply running dry for people who maybe did want to leave. It was a different complication. How quickly do you estimate that basic resources will be able to return to the state?
Very quickly. Again, we learned a lot from Harvey. We learned about staging. We have the ports that are extra, that are bigger than they've been, so now they're bringing in more fuel. This morning I saw a couple of convenience stores that were open, incredibly packed, but they did have gasoline. Now that I think that the crisis of the storm itself is over, the supply chains will catch up to it, hopefully within the next day or two, and I think we'll be back to normal in that regard by the end of the week.
Congressman Dennis Ross, we know there will be a lot of cleanup and recovery there in your district. We wish you all the best. We send you our prayers through that process, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Congressman delivering a generator to a constituent.
That's constituent services.
That's above and beyond.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Well, rescues continue in Florida as folks on the Gulf Coast brace for high tide. Crews plucking Irma victims from their flooded homes, with the water in some spots waist deep. Plus, concerns now about the storm surge as it triggers record-setting flooding.
One of the worst nightmares is driving the water up into Tampa Bay.
Florida Senator Bill Nelson joins us live next.
Let's check back in now with Bill Hemmer live in Orlando. He is going to check in with Senator Bill Nelson standing by with him. Bill?
Yeah. Hey, Shannon, good morning again. You know, in a typical hurricane, you can always tell when the storm's coming at you, when it's passing you, and when it's by you. It's always from the southeast, then the east, then the north, and decidedly now these winds are from the southwest, and really just the remaining bands of what is now Tropical Storm Irma moving here through central Florida. Jacksonville's a big deal. It's going to be a big deal for some time with this record-setting flooding that's already now and will not yet crest until 2 o'clock this afternoon. That's when high tide hits on the St. Johns River in Jacksonville. That's going to be a big deal throughout the day, and also the Florida Keys. What will the damage be in the end as you look at the string of islands in US 1 that runs out? You heard Adam Housley 20 minutes ago talking about the end of the line essentially in Marathon Key. At least part of that road has been blown out, and we await to get a full damage assessment down there. One person who's about to see it firsthand is with me now, and that's the Florida Democratic Senator Bill Nelson by telephone. Sir, and good morning to you.
Good morning. What a morning.
Yeah. Yes, indeed, sir. We spoke 14 hours ago. I know you're still in Orlando. I want our viewers to know you're about to get on board a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter. You're going to go down to Miami, pick up Senator Marco Rubio. You fly together to Key West, Florida, sir. What have you been told about the damage in Key West now?
It is what you would expect with about 120 mile an hour wind. But the Keys, you know, those are conchs, Florida conchs. They're accustomed to wind. They're tough. The great news was that most of them evacuated. There were only about 10,000 people left in the whole island chain. Most of the emergency personnel had moved up to the northernmost key, Key Largo. So they're all getting back down the road now, back in.
You're going to get a first-hand account, sir, and we'll talk to you later today and see what you find out there, and waiting on some of the images and aerials, which I know they're going to be stunning, and our viewers are waiting for them as well. Throughout the rest of the state, sir, whether locally here in Orlando or up in Jacksonville, what information are you getting about what Florida needs right now?
Florida's going to need a lot of debris removal. We are fortunate to have beautiful trees, and a lot of those trees have toppled over, and thus places are without power. The integrity of the dike on Lake Okeechobee is fine. They've lost power out there. One of Florida Power Line lights, main lines snapped. So there is a lack of power out there in western Palm Beach County near Lake Okeechobee. But there was no problem with the water pressure on the dike. And
wow,
I'm
that
very
is certainly
proud,
good news. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I'm proud of Floridians. Floridians obeyed the instructions. Floridians came together. People are helping people. I had no water here going in, any bottled water. One of my neighbors came over and gave me water ahead of the storm. That's the kind of spirit that is going on here in Florida.
Well, listen, we have complimented the patience and the kindness of Floridians since the moment we arrived here, so I can echo that sentiment. Sir, with regard to Naples, the mayor told us last hour they did not take a direct hit. The eye, in fact, passed over Naples at a time when the storm was pushing the Gulf of Mexico away from the city, which seems like a stroke of luck or perhaps a Mother Nature miracle for the people of Naples. However, Marco Island, just to the southeast, he said it's not accessible. Have you heard about the extent of damage on Marco Island, sir, or not?
I don't have an up-to-date report, but the phenomenon that you just mentioned happened in Naples, Fort Myers, with the Caloosahatchee River, as well as Tampa Bay. The water pushed out of those bays into the Gulf because of the east to west winds. What we feared was the eye of the hurricane was going to stay right out in the Gulf, and therefore when the eye passed, the water came rushing back in with a huge tidal surge. Fortunately, that did not happen. The eye moved on to land somewhere around just before Fort Myers and then stayed over land all the way up in between Orlando and Tampa before taking a more north-northwest direction. Now, you mentioned Jacksonville. That's an interesting phenomenon. All the drainage going into the upper St. Johns, and this is a river that flows from south to north. East of Orlando is the upper St. Johns. That, of course, is filling up because of all the rain. But because of the counterclockwise winds, it's going from south to north, therefore pushing the river water north to the mouth of the river at Jacksonville. And then that's meeting a high tide coming from the Atlantic, and you get that phenomenon of all the high water in Jacksonville topping the riverbanks, getting into downtown Jacksonville.
Wow, that is great information. We really appreciate that. Yeah. Senator, you know, for the people in Jacksonville, right, for the people in Jacksonville, I mean, they are getting unlucky, but the previous description for the West Coast that we watched yesterday, whether it's in Naples or up through Fort Myers or Sarasota or St. Pete or Tampa, that is, the parting of the seas there is biblical, Senator. And thank you for joining us now, and good luck to you down in Key West. Those folks down there took a big hit from this storm, and we'll speak to you a bit later. Senator Bill Nelson by telephone here. Good luck in Orlando. We'll be heading down to Key West, John, a bit later with Marco Rubio, and we'll get a first-hand account a bit later today. Back to you now in New York.
Still waiting to hear how the Keys fared through all of this, as you point out, Bill. Thank you. So Irma pushing inland in Florida, this time as a tropical storm, but its high winds and heavy flooding are creating hazards all across the state. Jeff Flock with Fox Business Network is live at Madeira Bay, Florida. Jeff?
Hey, John. And what Senator Nelson was just describing is somewhat similar to what's going on right here. This is John's Pass. We're on the Madeira beach. This is what they call John's Pass. And yesterday, the water got sucked out of this estuary here, and now you see, if Bob's able to spin back around, we got because of that counterclockwise rotation, the storm has passed us. So now the wind is coming directly at us off the Gulf. Before it was blowing from the shore onto the Gulf. Now we're getting that water coming back here. And we've got high tide today at 5:43. And already this is a pretty angry Gulf. This does not look like a Gulf to me. It looks more like an ocean. But in fact, that's what it is. And, you know, we still got pretty severe wind. I mean, I say severe compared to some of what we've been through. Not really. This tropical storm force winds, but it's still pushing that water, and it's pushing a lot of it. And we'll see what happens at high tide. That's, as I said, about 5, 6 o'clock tonight. I don't think it's going to be a disaster, but it might be a little bit of a pain and a mess. John?
So you've got wind, obviously. What about the rain? Has that pretty much ended?
Well, I will say totally ended, because occasionally a squall will come through, but we had sunshine. I mean, you see still a fair number of clouds up there, but we had sunshine a little while ago. But every time you think, oh yeah, we're done, not quite. This is a big, big storm.
Put on your SPF 30 for that sunshine there in Florida. Jeff Flock.
I wish.
Jeff, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Well, much more ahead on this disaster unfolding in Florida as Irma causes, among other things, power outages right now affecting millions all across the state. And some say they could be in the dark for weeks. What the federal government can do to try to help.
We have a number of residents who are without power. We have a number of residents that have debris down. So it's patience is the key word. We're aware of it. We're coming.
A Fox News alert on Irma, now a tropical storm heading for Georgia, but Florida is not out of the danger zone yet, not by a long shot. Record-setting flooding and millions of folks losing power across that state. The White House is keeping a close eye on the situation.
The president's been monitoring this storm 24/7. And the people of South Florida, the people of the entire state should know we are with you. The president has directed the full resources of the federal government to be brought to bear to support the efforts of Governor Scott and state and local officials across Florida, and we will continue to do that. It's important to remember this is and continues to be a very dangerous storm.
Joining us now on the phone from Davie, Florida, David Paulson, former FEMA director and senior partner of Global Emergency Solutions. So, Mr. Paulson, have you been able to get out and look around at what the storm did to Davie?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, we had a curfew for a while, and in my neighborhood, we have a lot of trees down, a lot of debris on the road, but I don't see any damage to the home, so that's a good thing. Still no power. We've been without power in this area for 24 hours, maybe a little bit longer. And but the Florida Department is slowly working on it. What I do recognize, though, is the cooperation between the federal government, the states, and the locals. We didn't have that in Katrina. And we made a lot of changes on how we operate, and it worked very well with Hurricane Harvey, and it's worked very well here.
So you think that the cooperation, the plans that have been put in place since Katrina are paying off?
Absolutely, yeah. The policy change we made, where there's actually a declaration before landfall that allowed FEMA to move people and supplies in early, and allowed them to open up the disaster relief fund to fund those things. And then also the type of incident command system we use has worked very well. There's been a lot of coordination, a lot of cooperation, a lot of conversation between the president, states, and the locals, and that makes things a lot easier. I have not seen any finger pointing. Everybody's just saying, "What do we got to do to get the job done?" And that's all a great sign.
There in Davie, you're closer to the east coast of Florida than the west. This storm was originally forecast to go up the east coast. It sort of ended up on the west side, but are you surprised at the ferociousness of it all? It was, in Miami and in Fort Lauderdale, this was still an incredibly powerful event.
Oh, extremely powerful. You're absolutely right on target. Andrew was a very powerful Category 5 storm, but it was very small and very fast-moving. Now it took out tens of thousands of homes, but this storm, the size of it was just remarkable. It covered the entire state. So yes, the West Coast got the worst of it, but we still had a lot of wind and rain on this side because the thing was just so big.
You know, my fear, I guess, because, you know, after Andrew, I was in Miami at that time and came out of my door and took a look around, and it looked like we had emerged okay, and I didn't realize that maybe 15 miles or 20 miles to the south in Homestead, there were entire neighborhoods that were obliterated. My fear is that the worst hit parts of Florida you're not hearing from now because power and communications are out. Is it possible that we're going to be shaking our heads at the tragedy that's befallen us here?
I think you're right on the fact that we really don't know what the damage is totally yet. It's coming out on the East Coast, you know, down in the city of Miami. We see the flooding down there, up in the Broward where I live. We see the tree damage and things like that. But the West Coast has not totally been able to get into that area yet. So I have the same fears that you do, that once we get in there, we're going to find a lot more damage than we thought we had.
Yeah, Key West.
And I hope I'm wrong.
I hope we are both wrong on that. David Paulison, former director of FEMA, who was there in Davie, Florida when that storm hit. Mr. Paulison, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as we continue to track Irma, it is now heading up into Georgia, the threat there, while Floridians still have to deal with the dangerous storm surges. It's not over there yet by a long shot. We're going to take a look at some of the damage coming up.